Okay, hi everyone. So it's SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Instead of actually analyzing a game, I'm going to show you a different way that you can actually analyze. This is something that I read, was it an article or was it many years ago, and I don't think I've ever seen it since, and so I felt like I should share it. And the basic idea is that normally when we analyze or review a game, we do it move by move, right? And so you're looking at basically one move chunks, ply by ply. What we're going to do instead, I'm going to just explain it very generally right now, and then I'll actually give you an example, so that way you can see the potential power of analyzing game this way. Instead of going move by move, you're going to do a chunk of moves, and then another chunk of moves, and then another chunk of moves. And so what this does is it helps us see the change in the position of how positions can evolve. And it really gives us a chance to hone in our evaluation skill. The first time I ever tried this, I fell in love with it. I think it's absolutely great. And so I want to share that with you. This might be something that you may find useful in your own games, or maybe not, but at least it's an option, and options are nice. This is a game I played several years ago. It's on chess.com, and well, let's just take a look. And so for the purposes of today, we're just going to go forward 4 moves. So that is, instead of looking at 1, 2, 3, etc., I'm just going to jump immediately after black's 4th move, right? So again, we got initial position and then 4th move, right? It's really easy to do this with computers. It's much harder to do it with books, but with computers, right, you can just click on the notation. There we go. So this is the first position, right? It's just whatever, just a regular book position, so we can just skip ahead. No, of course not. Even though it's book, there's still things that we can look at and try and understand in these types of positions, right? It's still a chess position. We can still make general conclusions. We can still test our evaluation. Let's look at this. What's going on? It's been 4 moves. What do we see? Okay, we both have a piece developed. That's great. Black, he has 2 pawns in the center, but only one of them is slightly advanced. White only has 1 pawn, center pawn left, but it's much more advanced. We can see that white has open lines for, in fact, all of his pieces. And so white's going to have likely some very fast development, very good activity. Whereas black still needs to make at least 1 more pawn move to get this bishop into the game. White generally has a bit more space. Again, pawn on his 4th rank versus only the 3rd rank for black. That's about it. What we might expect in such a position, well, we can see that white can develop really quickly. He's going to probably try and use that development. Black has 2 central pawns, so he's probably going to try and use 2 central pawns in the way that goes forward. So again, we're not going to go extremely deep. We're not really calculating. We're just looking at this position. What do you think about this position? Now, of course, we know through, books and theory, this position, it's about equal. It's a normal position. But that's fine. So we can just take a look at it and get a sense of what's happening. Because then we can skip ahead to the next block. We can actually see that things have changed quite a bit. And I always find it helpful to just sort of flip back and forth. Just that way I can really get a sense of what's changed in this position. What I find interesting is that in some ways things have gone exactly how we might have thought, but also not how we might have thought. Let's start with how it did. We can see that black has immediately put his 2 central pawns into the center, kicking white's knight away. Right here, white's knight is nice and beautiful. Here, it's got seemingly pushed away. That's great. But we can also see where things are different. Is that we thought that white had nice, simple, easy development. But instead, it appears that white's made nothing but pawn moves. So he's got a lot more pawns. He's got nice, good grip on this square right here. In fact, we can see that this square is a hole in black's position. He'd love to get a knight there if possible. But he hasn't actually moved or developed either of his pieces. Either of his bishops. In fact, temporarily, black has a small lead in development. We both have 2 minor pieces developed, but black also has a queen developed. Is that really a good thing in the opening? That's debatable. So here is actually a good chance, because this probably isn't a book position. Even if it were, let's use our minds. Let's train our evaluations. Who do you think is better in this position? if someone is better. Is it still equal? Unclear, right? It's just a game. What do you think? Well, again, white's got a nice temporary hole right here, but again, black's got his normal Sicilian counterplay. We can easily imagine something like knight c6, bishop e7, castle, maybe pairing f5, you know, so let's tentatively say that this position is about equal. No, it's a normal position. And in fact, you could even just, you know, you can make a little annotation to yourself so you can come back to that. So let's jump ahead to the next one. Oh, wow. So again, let's just flip back and forth a few times. What's happened? Get a sense of what's happened across this position. And so now, white's pawn went from here to here. You can see that, right here to here. And so now we got this very nice pawn chain leading all the way up. White has 2 minor pieces developed and the rook, whereas black has 3 minor pieces. The thing is that we can just clearly see how much more space white has. Around here, okay, white has a little bit more space, a little bit more control, but it's all right. Here, it's very predominant how much white has improved with his space. Black looks cramped. Hard to see. His queen, which used to be on c7, right, developed, has seemingly been pushed all the way back to d8. So what's that tell us? This tells us from this position to this position, white's position is better. I think we can look at this. White's got more space. It's equal development. White even has the 2 bishops, versus black, he only has 1. In fact, it's a bad bishop. It's the same color as his pawn, so that's not very good. So it looks like from here to here, something's gone wrong for black. White is better. And so what we know, we can even put our note in here. That's excellent. So this tells us if this position was, you know, roughly equal, and this position is now better for white, that black must have made some sort of error, some sort of mistake, some sort of inaccuracy in the preceding few moves. And so we can actually go back and we can see if we can find that. We're going to do that, but first, let's keep going. Let's jump to the next one. Is there anything else we should really look about in this position? I think white's got a good space. Material is still equal, so that's always good. White does have the 2 bishops. White's controlled the open C file. I think we've covered everything. Let's jump to the next one. So let's go here to here, here to here. What do we see? It's actually interesting because black's pieces, these minor pieces, they don't actually move. So the only difference is that black appears to be castling, and then his queen's coming over here on b8, which is kind of a funny move. We can see that white is now fully developed. All of his pieces are developed. He's castled. He still has the space advantage. So looking at white, it looks like white is just, again, fully developed. White is doing great. Is there anything more that we could really add? He still has the 2 pieces, the 2 bishops, still has control of the open C file, still has a space advantage. Position hasn't changed too much. So I think, is white still better? White's still better. So we can make a note here. No, not much has changed. White's still better. Let's look at the next one. Whoa, huge change. So okay, so we're from here to here. Here to here. So it looks like, so black's pieces, they're still getting cramped over here. So black still hasn't solved the space problem. But let's see, white is actually up a pawn, and it's white's to move. So it looks like, yeah, his next move is going to be this, where we're actually going to be 2 pawns up. So somewhere here, from here to here, black's queen side has completely collapsed. Again, after this, he's going to be down 2 pawns. White has 2 passed pawns. It looks like white is simply winning here. Anything else? Still the 2 bishops. Black has no play. There's no danger. Looks like there's going to be a queen exchange. And yeah, so it looks, so from here, we can say white is winning. That's what our evaluation would be. And then, you know, we can just skip ahead 4 more moves. And Well, that looks pretty decisive, doesn't it? White actually has 3 pawns, 3 of them are passed, and there's not much. I think we could probably stop right here. And so, if we were to back up then, we could see from the first position, regular book position, as we know that. Like, we figure out roughly what's going to happen. But then something weird happened here, where we got to a position we didn't expect. If we really want to look at our openings, if we're really trying to improve our openings, then we could perhaps try and figure out, because something strange happened here. Now, I'm not going to focus on the opening too much, but this could be a chance where you would open up the database, look at the reference, and see how masters would have actually played this position, or how the grandmasters, what the book recommends, what Stockfish recommends. And this might be able to improve the position from here for either side. Now from here, we notice that we said this position was normal, and in this position, white was better. And so this gives us our first clue, is that somewhere in these 4 moves, we're going to want to find black's mistake. How did white take advantage? And in this position, not much had changed. White was still better. But then from here, we found out that all of a sudden white was winning. So white went from better to winning. And so this is the second position that we would want to start looking for, trying to see if we can find the mistake. And so let's start from here, actually. So in this game, let's see. So white ended up playing queen c3, full control of the c-file. And so here's where things change. Sorry, I should actually just mention that. So we've just done our general overview. We've looked at it, in 4 move sections. And now we know exactly where we want to focus. We can put all of our effort into trying to figure out mistakes or what's happening in these positions. Right? So now we can actually go move by move. But we don't have to go through move by move the entire game. We're really focusing on just really these 4 moves. So black ended up playing bishop to d8. So we can see here is that when white played, queen goes to c3. So if I can just delete that. It looks like really the queen's probably going to come in here. And black defends. It makes a lot of sense. The queen then moves to b4. So now, controlling this square, controlling this square, because maybe an idea with bishop to d8 is black, he wants to exchange this bishop. Because we notice that black is cramped, and white is stopping that. So now bishop d8 is not a problem, is no longer a threat from black. This pawn's being attacked. It's defended by the queen right now, so things are okay. b5. So I think black, he's preparing to play bishop to d6 again. Rook to c6. Look at that. This pawn is weak. That pawn, that pawn. So, ooh, I think that was the problem right there, wasn't it? Because now black's going to defend the pawn, but then he loses that pawn, and then we could see how this is. So we can figure out this appears right here. When black played, let me just delete some of these arrows, b5. That allowed rook c6. So we can know instantly, we can like put a little annotation in. So we found black's mistake. When he played b5, trying to get into this bishop d6, trying to get a bit more space, he overlooked rook c6. So this looks like the decisive blunder. Now white is just overpowering. There we go. And so now we could also think, what's a better move for black in this position? Because we can see that black was trying to get, this exchange, likely. Trying to get a bit more space, but it doesn't work. He really needs to control c6. So what can you do instead? Let's just, think of something. Well, this entire time, it doesn't look like black has had any real play. Right? He's been reacting to white. He's really been on the back foot. We know in this type of pawn structure, it's kind of similar to the King's Indian, where we would love to eventually get f5 in. So maybe an idea, something like knight to h5, preparing f5, or maybe play g6, bring the knight back. Something like this might be the right sort of plan. Because then at least black isn't just sitting there letting white come at it. Maybe black is coming at white. Maybe this is something worth looking at. And so what we're going to do is afterwards, we'll take a look with the computer just to confirm that this is a mistake, and we'll see if this is the right sort of plan. So now let's also go back, because we've said from here, this position was normal. Oops, sorry. Let's go from this position. And then we said that white was better when we got here. So let's see if we can find black's mistake. So white ended up playing knight to d5. Ooh, okay. And so he's hitting the knight, hitting the queen, and also hitting this square. Taking with the knight would be bad, because hitting the bishop would have to move. Leaving the knight there doesn't look really good. So probably in the game he took with the bishop. That makes a lot of sense. C takes. Now we see how the open C file happened. All right, black develops. That's the only square the knight can go to. Bishop b6. Develop. And then we saw, yep, the rook comes here. Oh, but that's the exact same position that we now saw that white was better. So let's back up. So white played knight d5. Is there anything better than bishop takes d5? Like he's just moving the queen back? Well, white will probably just keep playing normally. Now we're threatening to come in here. White's got dominant knight. I don't know. Yeah, taking's probably best. All right, he develops the knight. Is there anything better? We know what white wants to do. White wants to play bishop and rook. Is there any way that black can really stop that? Not really, eh? So knight d7, bishop e3, queen to d8. Now we're in that bad position. So what does this tell us? This actually tells us something. If we think white is better here, and we go back here, and we thought this position was roughly equal, that tells us we were wrong. Because if we cannot find an improvement for black in any of these moves, and white's better here, then that means white must be better here. It's just we didn't see it for whatever reason. And so this is where it helps us train our evaluation. And this actually tells us, in fact, that if white is actually better here, then black's mistake came earlier. And so then we could actually really dig into these final moves. In fact, it looks like this queen c7 move is probably a mistake, because that invites this knight to d5. And we saw how once the c file opened, the rook was coming here. Okay, so that tells us in this position, we either don't want to put the queen on c7, or we certainly don't want to rush it. Something else is there. What can we do instead? I think there's all sorts of ideas. One idea would be to play knight c6, trying to look at d4 immediately. Another idea is just bishop e7, castle, and then again, maybe we can move this knight, prepare an eventual f5. That looks possible. But it certainly looks like this queen c7, let's put that, was inaccurate, because that let white get an advantage. So now, after we do all of that, we can now use the computator. So I can load Stockfish, you can see it over here. So let's start. Let's look at knight c3. So we can see that this position, it thinks the position is, normal opening position. After queen c7, it's already +1. So that confirms that, yes, the queen c7 move, inaccurate. What did it like better? So it did like, okay, so there's a whole bunch of moves it's actually thinking. It's looking at a5. Okay, it probably wants to maybe chase this knight away. Interesting, just gaining space. Maybe getting the b4 square. Okay, interesting. What other move? It does look at a bishop e7, like we looked at. And it does look at knight c6. So excellent. And so this confirms our evaluation now, that we really like this. And it also confirms what we were saying, is that in this position, at first glance, I thought that it was normal. It was an equalish position. But no, white's actually doing better. And so this is confirming our analysis. Yay, good for us. We can go in here. Is there anything better than taking the knight? No, it says that taking the knight's the best move. Queen d8 is the second best, but again, white has that +1 advantage, so that's great. Now let's skip ahead. What were we looking at? Right here. So queen b4, let's look at this. Yeah, we still thought white was better this entire time, right? And so we can see that white still has roughly that +1, that plus from anywhere from 1 to 1.3, wherever. And we thought b5 was a mistake. And the computer confirms that. So this is excellent. This is showing that our analysis was correct. Woohoo! So let's look. What's a different move? So it's looking at, okay, so knight h5, it is there. It's one of the top 2 moves. It's also looking at h5. That's interesting. Though h5, the evaluation isn't too good. g6 is an idea. Again, potentially preparing f5. Okay. And also just king h8, which I don't really understand. Maybe. Is it trying to do this and this? No, it looks like he's trying to play knight g8 and then getting f5 next. So this, in this position, it looks like white is nearly winning, actually. It's really getting really close. You know, it's the computer is really happy with white. But we can see that black's rough idea is to do something here with that f5, which roughly confirmed what we were thinking. But we can see that b5 was the mistake. So do you see how this type of analysis is different than just looking at it move by move by move? Is that by taking a very general look at the game first in these kind of 4-move blocks, it allows us to train our evaluation. When is one side better? When is one side worse? Often we're going to find that one side is better, then we'll skip ahead a few moves, and all of a sudden the position is equal or unclear again. Well, then we can look at those 4 moves and try and figure out, you know, where was the error? Where did you lose your advantage? And so by doing this, it really trains us to look at just a very small select number of moves and to really use our evaluation, trying to figure it out, try and find, can we find the mistake? And then we can use the computer afterwards to confirm or deny everything we do. So rather than, again, this entire game, let me just delete this, right? There's 35 moves in this game. That's a lot. So, you know, if you want to look at every single move. But by doing this, you know, you look at 4-move chunks. You can do it in smaller chunks, 3-move chunks. You can do it in 5, 6-move chunks, depending how big the game is and depending how strong you are as a player. It can really tell you to find where their critical positions are and then where to focus. And there are going to be times where you have no idea what's going on. And that's fine. You can just like type in, you know, question mark, question mark, question mark, and then go back and try and see if you can figure it out later. But by doing this, again, it really helps you focus on very specific areas and really trying to clue on mistakes. Because mistakes are what decide games. So we want to be able to see mistakes from our opponent, and we want to be able to make sure that we don't make those mistakes ourselves. And when we think we find a mistake, try and find an alternative. Try and find a different move. I've done analysis like this an awful lot. I think it's great. I think it's fun. I certainly think it's different. You don't need to do this every single time, but just playing around is going to be very... I really enjoy it. Maybe you will as well. And I haven't seen a heck of a lot of people mention this, so I thought I would do that. So there we go. So that's it. I hope you found that interesting, enjoyable. Try it out in your games. Let me know what you think. And maybe I'll do more of these if people like that. Otherwise, that's that. So again, SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. Happy Canada Day for those of you fellow Canadians. It's also Somalia's Independence Day, I believe. And I think there's some other countries celebrating independence. I know in a couple of days it'll be the neighbors down south. Hopefully everyone's having, you know, a good start to the summer and everything's great. So otherwise, take care, everyone. Bye for now.